This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. I am here with Matthew Lane. Matthew, how are we doing, my friend?
You know, we're doing well. It's summertime. It's hot out. We got the outdoor activities flowing. We got all the yard work. We got all the fun stuff. So it's been a long week for me. You know, we're only hump day right now, and we're still struggling. We're fighting through this bad boy. We got some oil changes done. We got some lawns to be mowed. We got a water park going to with 3 kids. There's a lot that's been happening this week already. So let me tell you, I'm exhausted right now, Kent.
Oh, man. The summer is in full swing, and it's been crazy around here. We are just, it's one activity to the next activity. We are just moving around like crazy. So, it's been quite a lot. But thank you all for joining us today. We are continuing our season preview, going game by game, looking at teams, looking at the roster of these teams, kind of, getting a feel for all the teams that the Chiefs will be playing in 2024, at least during the regular season. And it's time for a little local flavor. The AFC West. We're getting some AFC West going here today, talking about the Los Angeles Chargers, who the Chiefs will go to Los Angeles and play in Week 4 of the regular season. And Matthew, we will start with this. What is the quality of this Chargers roster?
Well, before that, I didn't notice this when it schedule release. I just kind of, as we were doing all these things, I realized the Chiefs are going like night game, late afternoon game, night game, late afternoon game, night game, late afternoon game. I believe there's 6 weeks. It's just this rotating schedule. Exactly every other one is a night game or the late game, evening game. So that's good. No noon games. We don't want those. As for the Chargers, don't. As for the Chargers, it's a quality roster, right? Like it's good. It's the same roster essentially that they've had. They've brought in some new guys. They've lost a couple people, but for the most part, it's a good roster. I think we've kind of gotten to the point with, the loss of Keenan Allen, a little bit of turnover along the offensive line. I think we've kind of gotten to the point where some of the core of this Chargers team that was consistently picked year over year to win the AFC West has maybe started to take a step back. They've lost a couple guys that were the key pieces to what this team had been over the years. Eckler's another one you can throw in there. So they have definitely lost some guys that were the core members of this team. But overall, top to bottom, you're going to pick out a couple weak spots in this roster. But I don't think anybody jumps out to you. Any position group jumps out as oh, wow, they're exceptionally weak here. That's a big area that's going to hold them back. It's just they might not be quite the upper tier of talent that they had been 2-3 years ago when they really started to make this push to being the next challenger for the AFC West.
I think we started to underrate the Chargers a little bit, just because, they lost Brandon Staley and this team has underperformed over the last few years. And then they bring in Harbaugh and we just assume it's the same old Chargers over and over again. But there's still a lot of talent on this roster. And I think that they are building this team smartly. I credit to Jim Harbaugh for what he's doing so far. I think, he made a sound, smart investment on the offensive line. Went and grabbed, Alad McConkey. It's mostly been through the draft. It's not like it's been a ton of, significant free agency changes to this team. There's plenty of talent that was left over on the roster from when Brandon Staley was the head coach. And they've made some really smart, sound moves. They're hoping for big jumps from some select players on this roster. And I think they're building smartly. They're not trying to rush the process. They're trying to build a team in the image of Jim Harbaugh. And I think the early returns so far after one draft and one free agency cycle, I think they've done a pretty good job to this point, kind of starting that process of building that roster, I think.
And that's it. I think that's the key. Yeah. It's everything they're doing is about Harbaugh, right? And this is what he did at Michigan. I think Harbaugh's time at Michigan, had a lot of ups and downs. We got to the point in the COVID year where people were ready to fire him because he didn't have Michigan go in the right direction. And then we come out of that year and he had finally got that program where he wanted it. He got the support that he needed from, people above him on the food chain. And then all of a sudden now he gets to make this Michigan Wolverines team into his perfect image of a football team. And we saw how dominant that was for these past couple seasons. And I think the Chargers are going to go through the same thing. So you might look around and see some guys oh yeah, I love that guy as a role player, but is he really what you want to be a starter? And maybe for 31 other teams, that's a no. But for, I think, Jim Harbaugh, it's a yes. And he's one of the few coaches that if you look through his entire coaching career, you probably got to give him a little bit of leeway. You got to give him a long leash to find these guys that maybe aren't as coveted by the masses, but that fit what he wants to do. And so I think you start looking through this team, and even in the wide receiver room, right? Like maybe they're missing a star, especially now without Keenan Allen or Mike Williams there. But okay, Josh Palmer, not a great player, but he does a lot of the kind of stuff that Jim Harbaugh loves out of wide receivers. We'll see what Quentin Johnson turns into. Ladd McConkey, again, a guy that's willing to do a lot of the gritty stuff. That's the things, kind of things that Harbaugh likes. It's just when you go through all these position groups, maybe they aren't stars everywhere. Maybe there's not even guys that you'd be like, oh yeah, I definitely want that player on the Chiefs to take over as a starting role. But when you consider it through the Harbaugh lens, I think that makes it look a lot better. And I think everything that this team does while he's there, you have to consider from that angle.
Yeah, and this is the best quarterback that Jim Harbaugh has ever had. And so now you're doing that. You're kind of playing Harbaugh football. And now you've got Justin Herbert in the mix here as well. So you look like you're ready to question whether or not this is the best quarterback that Jim Harbaugh's ever had.
Okay, when was Andrew Luck at Stanford?
In the NFL.
Okay. Fair. That's okay. Fine. That's fine. I was like, wait a second. Do I have my timeline entirely mixed up here?
I didn't know we were done. I do think Harbaugh was coached by Luck, but I was not even remotely trying to use college football as a barometer here. But yeah, Andrew Luck's a better quarterback than Justin Herbert was from a National Football League perspective. But I'm just speaking specifically to what he's had in the NFL. So
yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay. All right. I'm going to continue on. We've already waxed poetic a little bit about Jim Harbaugh. Let's talk about the rest of his staff. What's the quality of the staff, Matthew?
I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see. Like, it's a lot of the guys you're familiar with. A lot of them. Okay, let's go with, I guess, the elephant in the room. Greg Roman's there. Okay, we're going to address the Greg Roman aspect of it. Jesse Minter comes over. They brought a lot of other assistant coaches and people that are familiar with the Harbaugh coaching trees around the NFL have come in. These guys, I think we all have to say, have been good coaches, at least at the college developmental side. Some of them have experience in the NFL, and it has gone well. So I think overall the coaching staff is very strong. I like some of the guys they're bringing in. I don't know if they're necessarily going to bring in any fantastic new age groundbreaking ideas, but what you're going to get is a bunch of guys that are going to deal in physicality. They're going to deal in the Jim Harbaugh way, like we already talked about the players. And I like Jesse Minter as a DC because he is going to give you a lot of that ever-changing looks that you saw from the what you get out of Steve Spagnuolo a lot with the Chiefs. You're going to get that type of defense. Now, the issue is Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator. On one hand, Greg Roman early on with all of these stints as an offensive coordinator goes really well to start. He brings in, it looks a little bit different than what you expect. It's a lot of running quarterback stuff, and I don't know how much you're going to get that with Harbaugh, but it looks a little different than what you expect. So there's early success, but then it seems to flatline because he really struggles to adapt to his team's strengths and his players' strengths. So unless there is just this perfect unison of what Harbaugh is going to set him up with, I do think a year, 2 years down the line, you might see some struggles from Greg Roman. Maybe that'll be the time they look to move on from him, and this is just a stabilizing factor. So I'm a little bit more wait and see with Greg Roman because I think we have a long enough list to say, it works to start, but then it kind of falls out of grace pretty quickly everywhere he goes.
And, I wonder if they want some, Jim Harbaugh obviously wants some synergy, but he's had success with Greg Roman in the National Football League before. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh will still put some input there on the offensive side of the ball there. I still think he will have some level of control with what that offense looks like. And, I think Greg, they're not trying to modernize by any stretch of the word, but I'm sure, he'll be able to, maybe help drag this team through some of those rough stretches and maybe challenge Greg Roman in a little bit different way, especially considering the kind of quarterback that they're going to have there throwing the football for him. But yeah, I do think there's reason to have some question marks, even though Greg Roman definitely has had some success in the league. And hey, look, I mean, the current, who's the Ravens offensive coordinator, Todd Monken right now, hey, things didn't really turn out so hot for them in the playoffs this last year either, the same way things kind of fizzled out with Greg Roman. So, maybe there's a little bit of grace to be had there. But yeah, I do really like the staff. Jim Harbaugh's always been really good about picking staff. That's part of the success of the Harbaugh tree, as they've always been very good about identifying good coaches, not just at the coordinator level, but up and down that roster. That's always been something that's been very good with the Harbaughs. So, yeah, you don't want to put anything past them there. I think this is a a really quality staff that they've started to put together. I would feel good if I was the Chargers. Let's talk about some of the new additions on this roster. There wasn't a ton of sweeping free agency changes, but this team has definitely started to make some moves to try to get better here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a lot of guys in the draft, and so we can go through a couple of those. But if I'm looking through, I'm poking through. Christian Fulton was brought in, a cornerback that coming out of LSU a few years back, we all kind of liked. That we're doing the KCS and draft guide, and he was injured off and on with Tennessee Titans, but he's stepping in. I believe he is replacing Mike Davis on the outside, and Davis was never a great cornerback, but he had size, he had length, and he always presented some matchup issues. And now the reason I bring this up is Fulton's a little bit of a thinner guy. And across from him is going to be Asante Samuel Jr. You now are going to have two thinner, not overly physical cornerbacks on the outside of this Jesse Minter defense, in which there is some required physicality out of the secondary. There is some times where these cornerbacks are going to have to be physical. They're going to be the force players against the run. They are going to be asked to make big plays. And if we kind of rewind this back a couple years to when the Jaguars made that comeback against the Chargers, how did they do it? They just forced Asante Samuel to make tackles on the edge, play after play after play, and he couldn't do it. You're now putting another poor-ish tackler across for him. So it sounds like it's a small thing, but I think bringing Fulton in to be the other opposite corner, I like the talent, I like the swing. I just think it's an interesting decision if he gets the starting job. They also drafted Cam Hart in the middle rounds out of Notre Dame. He's a bigger physical guy. It's just, I wonder what that secondary looks like. Are they going to be able to make the tackles and be able to play the way that I think Minter wants them to play on the back end? Because I don't know if you can trust that, the physicality, the tackling ability of that secondary right now, especially if Derwin James doesn't have a bounce back to what his season was last year.
You'll never believe this, but a Baltimore Ravens tree general manager is playing the compensatory pick game. The Chargers have let a lot of players walk. Kenneth Murray, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler, Michael Davis, Austin Johnson, let them walk. They've really only gained two compensatory free agents. That's Gus Edwards and Christian Fulton. Everybody else, they've made some smaller moves like Apuna Ford, Denzel Perryman, J.K. Dobbins. They're making some of these small fringe moves that aren't counted against the compensatory formula to continue to build this roster up. And they're kind of not making any major investments when it comes to the free agency side. But, they've definitely loaded that running back room up significantly with a Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal in the draft. Like they are definitely getting some backs there to try to turn around and hand the football off. They've made some investments in the draft too that I think were really smart. Like, hey, you know what? They grab, we talked about Joe Alt. I think that was just a slam dunk, great pick for them with where they're at. Ladd McConkey in round 2, a guy that we were all very high on. But, continuing to build to players that kind of fit their identity with like a Junior Colson who's got that Michigan pedigree, went around and played they signed Justin Eboigui or drafted Justin Eboigui in round 4, a guy that kind of just plays that kind of Charger football that I think they're wanting to play, that physicality. He's not an overly dynamic player, but he's tough, he's physical. He's a dirty work type player. Just continue to stack this roster with players that I think do kind of fit their culture, and then taking some swings at the wide receiver position. A much maligned wide receiver position. People asking, what are they going to do at receiver? What are they going to do at receiver? Well, they're hoping Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer can take a step / stay healthy. They add Ladd McConkey, and they took a swing on Brendan Rice and Cornelius Johnson. There's some interesting players that they've kind of added to the mix there.
Yeah, and before we move on, I just want to say, because the whole running back room is all new guys, all guys that they added this year. And so they're bringing in J.K. Dobbins, hey, Baltimore connection. They're bringing in Gus Edwards, hey, Baltimore connection. And then they also drafted Kamani Vidal, a rookie. And so these top 3 running backs, projected running backs of this team, are all going to be new. And we're talking about Greg Roman earlier and what Harbaugh wants to do as a team. This team wants to run the football. There's some hole. I mean, like the offensive line has talent, but there's also some holes, especially with the Corey Linsley retirement at center. So now you have like a Bradley Bozeman or Brendan James are stepping in to start at the center spot. Jamari Salyer was okay as a guard, but he's now got to slide in next. So it's like they have some questions on the interior offensive line. Now you have some questions at running back because J.K. Dobbins, a lot of talent, he's been hurt. Gus Edwards has always been kind of a better second fiddle as a running back rather than the guy. Then you're bringing in a rookie in Vidal. Like, how is this run game going to dominate without a Lamar Jackson, without a Colin Kaepernick as a runner at the QB position, along with a good but kind of workman-like running back group, like a stable of running backs behind it that might have some high-end potential if Dobbins can be healthy. But for the most part, it's going to be guys that are just getting a couple yards here and there. So it's just, I do think that all the running back guys or running backs are worth keeping an eye on, but it's the one spot of where this team, I think, might lack a little cohesion this year is the interior offensive line isn't the strongest in the NFL, and the running back room's a little too, I would say, like lacking just a spark, lacking a little bit of like just oomph for me to really fall for a team that wants to rely on a lot.
Couple guys familiar with Greg Roman's offense, potentially leading the way, and also Kamani Vidal as well. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
For years, I've been hearing PXG say, nobody makes golf clubs like they do, period. They're right. I went in for a fitting. I saw for myself. I went in and swung the PXG Black Ops driver, and it is a total game changer. You no longer have to sacrifice distance for forgiveness. I picked it up this week, and I am just beyond elated. The practice I got there, just kind of getting a fitting out there, was exceptional. Got to see the analytics on my swing, see how things were going. Got fit for a driver that makes perfect sense for my game. I was popping the ball up a little bit too high. Hey, they changed the loft on it a little bit there. It's an adjustable loft, so it gives me some options there, to kind of adjust that here or there as well. But I was so excited, and I had such a great fitting experience when I went into PXG's Kansas City location when I got that fitting. It was incredible. It was so great, and they'll even give you a dozen balls free just for coming in for a fitting. And I tell you what, it's helping take my game to a whole new level. PXG made me a believer, and they'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting. And come on, a free dozen balls. They're great too. pxg.com/KC Laboratory. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. All right, Matthew. Let's talk about some players to watch here.
Yeah, I'm gonna double dip here, and we're gonna go with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. The edge rush combo. I think Khalil Mack had a good bounce back year last year for the Chargers, but the problem is if you look, like 75% of his production came out of just like 3 games all season long, right? And so yes, he was a better player than 2 years ago when they first acquired him, where it kind of looked like maybe he was a little washed. But he had a bounce back. But how much was it? Was he really changing anything for them versus good opponents and games that really mattered? Or did he just kind of have a couple hot games where he collected some stats and just put up nice numbers? And then across from you have Joey Bosa, who's often injured. He's not as talented as Nick Bosa. He never has been, but he's also just struggled with injuries his entire career. He is always hurt. He's always playing through something. And I think we all kind of were ready for Bosa. So were the Chargers to take that next big step. He was once like the highest paid or second highest paid edge rusher in the NFL for a brief moment, and he just never really capitalized on it. Good player. Great player. When he's feeling good and he's healthy, he can beat the best offensive tackles one-on-one and take over a game. But he also, even when mostly healthy, can disappear from games, can get washed out. He's easily frustrated. And then when he gets frustrated, his antics become too much and detrimental. So it's just, I wonder what they get from these two. I think we talked about it. This roster's good, but not overwhelmingly talented to where you can have Khalil Mack and Bosa, the money you have tied up into those guys, not be dominant and have that be made up for elsewhere. They kind of need those two guys to be able to win as part of a 4-man pass rush to allow them to do everything else they want to do on the back end to make up for some of the other shortcomings that we'd kind of mentioned throughout this. So Jesse Minter really wants those two guys to step up. Are one of them, are both of them? Those are kind of the two guys that I think they're relying on a lot. And the past 3 to 4 years says, I don't know if it's coming.
Some of these bigger name contracts like these two, they kind of help this team potentially be competitive from year one, win some football games, do some good things as they're trying to build a culture and identity. But I mean, the chances are that when the Chargers are in their, the best version of themselves, ready to compete, if they're going to get to that point in the Jim Harbaugh era, Khalil Mack's not going to be part of it, most likely. I mean, that's just the truth. But he's a guy that he is, under contract at a significant number this year, and then you'll have to see about his future moving forward. But yeah, it's definitely it's a talent. Those are talented players that you don't want to just get rid of. But while the rebuild is occurring, they're probably not going to be there to see, the team that's really serious about competing for the AFC West. My player to watch is Justin Herbert, and this is a big year for Justin Herbert because you're making the coaching change here. You're fitting in an identity that on its face doesn't seem like it's completely perfect for any quarterback, really, because Jim Harbaugh wants to turn around and hand the football off, right? But I do think it's funny that the second that, the most success Jim Harbaugh has had at Michigan is when he finally got the quarterback situation settled. And yes, there were times where they turned around and handed the football off 20-something straight times, even though they had a pretty good quarterback. This is just the Harbaugh identity and who they want to be. But I want to see how those two play styles mesh together, the Herbert-Harbaugh style mesh together. I want to see how if Justin Herbert's game changes in any real tangible ways. What does this look like with a really talented quarterback and a guy and a coach that kind of wants to play stylistically as if he doesn't have a really good quarterback? Kind of interested to see how those two things kind of mesh. So this is a big year for Justin Herbert and something I'm very curious of. How does this team beat the Chiefs, Matthew?
I think we feel better. The vibes are better around the Chargers this year than they have been in years past. It almost seems like this team is finally trending in the right direction because of the coaching staff hires they've made and how all the moves kind of mesh with where they're going, and the direction seems to be pointing up. The problem is, I feel like on paper, this is the team least likely to beat the Chiefs out of the past 2 to 3 to 4 teams, right? Like, we don't know how this Jesse Minter defense is going to go up against the Chiefs, whereas we did know that Brandon Staley before, his defense always played the Chiefs really, really well. We know they kind of had a tough matchup back and forth. And then with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert, that kind of presented the issue that the Chiefs struggled with on defense. Teams willing to throw YOLO balls down the field and challenge the Chiefs' corners that were in good coverage, but maybe lacking elite ball skills. Is that what we're going to get from this team now? Or are they going to be a little bit more unidimensional with a lesser wide receiver group, a coaching staff that wants to run the football, and now all of a sudden you may have a few more holes on defense with a different defensive coordinator coming in? The path to winning is ball control, being more physical, and like grinding the Chiefs down. It seems like the Chiefs have oddly done pretty well with Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes the past 3 seasons against teams that are one-dimensional like that and only have that one avenue to win. So I like the direction the Chargers are going. I just don't know if this is the year that they really push the Chiefs.
It doesn't feel like it, but weird things have happened. Jim Harbaugh, he's got a good feel for, how to win this style of football. And that's something you don't want to take for granted because he's won everywhere. He's stepped in and he's had a lot of success with the 49ers pretty quickly there. So, I think it's a grinded out style game, trying to limit the number of possessions as much as you can, kind of try to turn this into a rock fight. And, if you make a mistake early in a rock fight, you can start in these kind of games. We have seen the Chiefs press. If you put a Chiefs in a grinded out game where it feels like possessions are going to start getting limited and long sustained drives start occurring, I do think we've seen this team press a little bit in the past. So that's something I think that's basically the formula for it. I think you're right. Some kind of rock fight, grinded out game with maybe a little bit lower possessions than normal, and the pressure just starts getting put on the Chiefs a little bit, and they start making a few mistakes here or there. Who is the Chiefs' non-Mahomes MVP, Matthew?
Well, without Kenneth Murray to pick on for Travis Kelce, who I think will still have a great game, I am going to go with Hollywood Brown. Looking at this Chargers defense, we were kind of talking about, how Staley's done a pretty good job against the Chiefs in the past, and a lot of it's just putting this giant shell over the top and saying, you're not going to beat us deep. We're going to play fast everything underneath because we know you're going to take it now, but we're going to get there before you guys get to create extra yak. It's a different defensive coordinator now, though. I think Minter is going to have these guys playing a little bit less safe on the defense. There's going to be a lot more blitzing. There's going to be a lot more late rotations. There's going to be a lot more one-on-one opportunities. I don't think it's going to be this safe shell all game long, and I think that opens it up for a guy like Hollywood Brown to get one-on-one matchups, whether it is with a safety, a nickel corner, an outside corner, whether he's going vertical across the middle of the field. I just think this is a game where Hollywood Brown might find some really good matchups as the Chargers are kind of adjusting to how to defend this Kansas City Chiefs team with a bunch of, not all, but a bunch of coaches that haven't really coached against them under this iteration of the Chiefs.
Let's mix things up a little bit here. Let's go with Leo Chenal. If the Chargers would turn around and hand the football, they want to play in heavier personnel. That's when you could see the Chiefs potentially trying to counter with their own base personnel, and that's where Leo Chenal could kind of step in and play a role on this defense. You hear him say when he got drafted, what's he like? Violence and physicality, baby. That's right. Well, this is the kind of game, if you're Leo Chenal, this is the kind of opportunity that you have to play a little bit more potentially if they're going to be in a little bit heavier personnel and let you step in there and play with some physicality and some violence. This is the game that was built for you, my friend. So give me Leo Chenal as the player to watch for the Chiefs against the Chargers in Week 4. Matthew, what's the line you think? What's the line you think on this game?
This one is a road game, correct?
Yes.
Chiefs by 5.
Chiefs by 5. I don't know if I have a line for this one. I actually I think it's 5.5.
Okay, makes sense.
I think that's about right.
Home bump for the Chiefs. Chiefs playing at home, give them a little half-point bump. Makes sense.
I could see them run, I guess. I could see them running in there undefeated and maybe that line getting up to 7. You know, I could see it.
Oh, yeah. If the Chiefs are undefeated at that point and like they beat the teams like, the Ravens, the fraud goals and stuff, they're going into this one on a little bit of a heater. And especially if they look good offensively, I think so. I think that line will only climb.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there'll be some growing pains, I think, for the Chargers too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Anyways, let's do this. Youthful Regis wants to make an appearance, I've heard. So let's wait to see what happens there. Are we getting a Youthful Regis signing? Oh my gosh, it's Youthful Regis. You're muted.
Hint. Ooh, yeah, there's some technical difficulties. I'm not used to this programming anymore. I've been on TV so much lately. So, Kit, it's nice to see you. Youthful Regis back. It's been a long time. I have a brand.
I've heard a rumor that you were in the running to host Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, but lost out to Travis Kelce.
Listen, sometimes there's bigger stars than you, and you just got to accept that fate. When somebody's dating Taylor Swift, there's not even a guy that hosted Who Wants to Be a Millionaire can pull his weight around a little bit. So we are back. It's been too long, but we got a brand new game for you to play. Mm-hmm. But as everyone may notices, our favorite contestant, the perfect 20-0, the Renaissance man, Hollywood Hop, the Barley Stunner, the greatest of them all, Craig Stout, is not here. The challenge has been too big for the comeback kid, Hollywood Swanson. So instead, we have a new challenger that has come. He has answered the call. We have asked for a new player to come in, and that is none other than Tucker D, and the D stands for about to open up a can of whoop-ass Franklin. Tucker, welcome to the show, buddy. Are you ready?
I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so pumped up to be here.
Okay, hold on. You made the rundown. You surprised me with this on the rundown. You got Tucker involved. Something's fishy here. Something stinks here.
I've read someone here. Like, there's nothing to be scared about. You're already okay. You know what, Hollywood? You're already down a point. -1 for Hollywood. Tucker, the D stands for open up a can of whoop ass, is up 0 to -1. And here we are. We're starting. Nice. You can get back on the board. This is a 2-point question, but if you miss it, Tucker has a chance to steal. Rashee Rice had the most yards per route run against zone coverage for the Chiefs in the last season. Who was the best versus man-to-man coverage with over 10 targets versus man coverage?
Was this wide receivers only?
Yes.
Ooh.
Craig would already have the answer, by the way.
That's true.
Also Rashee Rice.
Incorrect. Not even in the top 3. Tucker, chance to steal for a point.
Justin Watson.
Ooh, that's a really good guess. And if I had upped the targets to 15, you would be correct. But unfortunately, he had a 2.23 yards per route run. Mecole Hardman, come on down with 2.26. Get that look off your face. You know what? That's another negative. You are at -2 now for your antics in this game, Tucker.
Disrespect for the game. Disrespect.
Commanding lead for the Rook.
A little bit.
All right. This one's coming to you, Tucker. A 2-point question.
Okay. Ooh.
In the playoffs, who had more receiving yards for the Chiefs? Rashee Rice or every other wide receiver on the team?
In the playoffs.
Just in the playoffs.
Just the playoffs. And is it every other receiver combined?
Combined.
Rashee Rice.
Incorrect. Now, since this was
right,
either or question, he cannot steal.
Right.
However,
no, that makes sense.
If he can name all of the wide receivers that recorded yards in the playoffs, I will let him steal a point.
Okay. Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Correct.
Justin Watson.
Maybe correct. I don't remember, and I'm pulling it back up. But
he did in the Super Bowl.
Okay, there's one that you're missing still, though.
I said Mecole MVS, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, and...
5, 4, 3, 2. Throw a name.
Kadarius Toney.
No, incorrect. Richie James, 1 catch. 6 yards was the only other.
I forgot Richie James was a Chief last year.
That's another negative. That is just rude. That is -3 for you.
Manners, etiquette. Come on.
You're going to win this game scoring 0.
You would have played this game before. All right, Kip, 2-pointer.
For having
most
respect.
pressures given up by an offensive lineman for the Chief on a per snap basis, or the pressure percentage given up by a Chiefs offensive lineman. Who was the worst?
Jawan Taylor.
Incorrect. Chance to steal for you, Tucker D. Franklin. The worst offensive line for the Chiefs in pressure percentage given up. Pressures given
No
up.
minimum. No minimum snaps?
200.
Oh, dang it. I was gonna try to cheat the system there.
What was your cheating of the system?
I was gonna say Wanya Morris.
He played over 200 snaps, just in case you were wondering.
Okay, I'm gonna say Wanya Morris.
That is correct. Wanya Morris with a 50% pressure percent given up with 225. 220. That is 2 points for Tucker D. Franklin. He's going to go on a run here. I feel it. He's got this question loaded up. Isaiah Pacheco had more games under 50 yards rushing or over 100 yards rushing last year. Regular season and playoffs. Did he have more games with under 50 yards rushing or more games with over 100 yards rushing?
Wow. I feel like he had a lot of games in between those two numbers.
Yes. Yes, he did.
What?
I'm gonna go with
Warning, Kent.
Yeah, it's a good call. Thank you, ref. I think that he had more games over 100 yards than he had under 50.
Incorrect, unfortunately. And since it's an even more, Kent can't steal. However, I will give him an opportunity. If he can tell me the exact number of games over 100 yards and under 50, he will get a point.
This is...
Say it, I dare you.
I'm going to say Isaiah Pacheco had 2 yards over 100 yards rushing, and he had 3 games under 50 yards rushing.
You were close. Just bump each one up by 1. It would have been correct. 4 games under 50, 3 over 100. Good try, Kent. All right, you need to come back. You're down 5 points right now. It's 3 for Kent, 2 to Tuck. You have a chance, though. Here's a 2-pointer right here coming in hot. The most snaps per completion of the Chiefs players. This is minimum, 100 coverage snaps. It's a guy that played a lot of coverage snaps. Who had the most snaps per completion?
Most snaps per completion.
Completion given up.
I'm going to go with Legarius.
Incorrect. Chance to steal, Tucker D. Franklin.
It's going to be Nick Jones.
It's not.
Here's my thought here. We all love Trent McDuffie, but we know that sometimes his ball skills cannot be the best, and there's been some sometimes some balls have threaded the needle in there. I'm going to go with Trent McDuffie.
Incorrect. He was actually the worst out of the guys that played a lot of coverage for the Chiefs. The correct answer was Joshua Williams with a wild 25 snaps per completion given up.
Oh, wow. Wouldn't have guessed that. Yeah. I would like to know how many of these Matty would have got right. Matthew Lane, if he was here.
I can guarantee you he would have gotten them all. He's over here. He's signing them to me right off to the side here. He has gotten all these 100% correct. So is Craig, by the way. He's also phoned in. All right, final question. Tucker wins. There's no drama here.
Yeah,
Tucker wins.
Interesting how this all.
This might be one of the widest score margins we have ever had in this game. And Tucker D. Franklin, the rookie, can go ahead and not seal this one home with answering this question correctly. The most passes defended by a non-secondary player for the Chiefs last season.
The most passes defended by a non-secondary player?
Yep, just PBUs, passes deflected, knocked down, intercepted, whatever it may be for a non-secondary player.
Ooh, I might try. I think I might be overthinking this, so I'm going to go with the answer I think is right in front of me. I'm going to say Drew Tranquil.
Incorrect. Kid has a chance to close this game in tight with 2 points and finish just 1 under 0.
Okay.
Should have
not good.
I have 2.
Okay.
I am going to go with George Karlaftis.
Wow. Incorrect. I was going to give you a chance to make up a bunch of bonus points if you could tell me the player, the amount, but you got neither. It was Chris Jones and Willie Gay, both tied with 4. So, final scores. Comeback kid's not so much of a comeback kid. Hollywood Swanson with -3. Yikes. But Tucker D. Franklin, the rookie, the newcomer, came in, opened a can of whoop ass, comes out with 2 points and a 5-point victory. Let's go. Youthful Regis has never been so proud.
I'd like to dedicate this victory. I'd like to dedicate this victory to Craig Stout and in his memory. This one's for you, Craig.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. I'm ready to get all the way out of here. Thank you to Youthful Regis for your participation and completely fair gameplay. I really appreciate how that was structured, especially considering I could never win back points when Tucker missed a question. That's going to do it for the show, though. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you. We love you. Except
minus a point.
We'll catch you later.
-2 points.
Really?
Quit questioning the game.